right, hello everyone. My name is James Spurrin and welcome to this session, the Matrix Reloaded, Dockerized and multi-platform ready. So in this one, we're going to have a lot of fun and hopefully by the end of it, on these three screens and hopefully on your laptops as well, we'll have a Matrix-like terminal screensaver, which is in C, compiled, built into a container with best practices running everywhere, so here, there, and on your laptops. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's James Spurrin. I'm a Docker captain and CNCF ambassador, and professionally I create courses which essentially cover Docker, Kubernetes, DevOps, and Cloud Native. And in the courses that I create, I have a particular focus on having immersive lab environments. And I've actually used some of the lab environments that I use on my courses for this talk. So as you go through, you'll actually be able to try these out. So this session, the Matrix Reloaded, Dockerized, and multi-platform ready, as I say, we're going to actually build this cmatrix project, which is essentially a terminal screensaver, which is written in C. We're going to go through the process that I typically take as a Docker captain, and this process, I use it 90% of the time when I'm building something from scratch. And if you actually want to follow along with the lab yourselves, you can actually hit that GitHub URL at the bottom there, or you can scan that, and this should actually bring up a page similar to the following. So we've got a great Morpheus picture there, and at the bottom you'll have this this link. If you've got Docker Desktop installed already, just copy that link, paste it into your terminal, give it a few moments with the Wi-Fi, and you should get this Docker Desktop extension, which will appear on the sidebar there. So just going back to this. So what are we actually going to cover? So if anyone's actually downloading that, give it a couple of minutes, and we'll just go over the outline of what we're doing today. So we're going to start with a very simple Alpine image, just to keep this ultra lightweight. And typically when I'm going through this process, I will build a container from this even without anything in. I will get myself into that environment, so it's a realistic environment of what we're actually using. Go through the process of actually building this project from scratch. So quite interesting with this. We're going to try and do this with static compilation in C. And once we've actually got this working, we'll take those steps we've done, we will build a functional prototype, we'll then, after we've got that working, we'll refactor it, we'll implement some best practices, and then we'll do a final thing on it where we'll try and build this so it's multi-platform ready for those, those who we know on Linux with S390X or whatever the architecture is, everyone included. So let's hop over, and hopefully anyone who's actually following along, if that's installed already, great, or it should just take a couple of minutes just to catch up. So you'll actually have this lab environment that you can follow through. So this will save me having to type every command. And just to give you a quick talk through on this, we've got the tutorial, which at any point, if you actually need some more space, you can actually toggle that. I'm just going to move this over this side to give us a bit more. If you have a desire for a particular theme, so I quite like Ubuntu, you can actually select your theme there. You can give your tabs particular names if you want to, and we'll just bump up the size a little bit there, so that's easier for you to see. And just to note with this, whilst we actually have this here and it's convenient in the extension, it essentially is exactly the same as on the desktop. All it's actually doing there is a client-server connection through to the local Docker, which is running on the desktop. It's just this will actually give me the convenience here of all of the commands. So just taking you through this first bit, I'll just enlarge that a little bit so it's easier to see there. Let me just take that down. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So as we actually go through this, as we actually encounter any particular commands, you've got these buttons here, so this will just copy it to the clipboard. We can send it to the terminal without pressing return, or we can actually do the rocket, which will actually echo that. So just going on to the first part of this, I mentioned that we're going to be doing this with an Alpine image. So you can actually see there, we've got the Docker images. I've already actually run this one. And at the moment, this is pretty much a vanilla Docker desktop install, with the exception of the this extension, which I'm actually using at the moment. So we've just got these free images right now, and there's not that much. Let me just take that down a little bit. There's not that much actually running right now. And what we're going to do is just pull Alpine, and that's working well. I was a bit worried here with the Wi-Fi today for some people, but fortunately I'm hardwired in. And if we actually check there, we can see we've got this Alpine image, which is 8 megabytes. So as I mentioned, I like to actually, if I'm actually building anything or working out how to build a particular project, I'll do this as I mean to go on. So I will actually create a Dockerfile from the start, and if we actually just take a look at that Dockerfile, this at the moment is super lightweight. And I've intentionally just kept an example in there. When you look at a lot of Dockerfiles, you'll see this maintainer line in many of the ones out there. Quite simply, I've left this in there just to highlight that the recommendation now is to actually use the opencontainers.org labels. So we've got a label there as the author, as myself, and I'm just giving a little shout back to the original maintainer of this cmatrix code that we're going to be looking at. And just to actually show you, this is the actual project we're going to be looking at in this. I've forked it just to keep this demo consistent for today and for anybody who actually watches this in the future. It's still pretty much current with the main repository, but we've got the various build steps, what we're actually expected to do, and we've got some examples of how this should actually look in our terminal. So just going back to this. So a very simple container at the moment, a very simple Dockerfile, but let's actually just build that. And if we actually take a look, we've got our Alpine image and we've got our custom image, which is exactly the same. Oh, just something to actually show you here. If you are following along with this in the room or online, you can see that I just did that for myself. So spur_in/cmatrix. But of course, you can actually just go in here and, for example, you can actually change this, and this will actually update any references to your name. So whatever you actually put in there will switch that over throughout the entire tutorial. So I'm just going to leave that as myself there, and let's go to the next step. So using our container as a working environment. So we've built this now. There's nothing really in it apart from our labels, but what I will typically do is I will get myself in that environment. And just for easier, I'm going to set the prompt. So I've got a custom prompt here, just to actually prove that we are in the container right now. And the first step of this is to actually capture this cmatrix code. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clone that code. And of course, as expected, we've hit our first issue. We don't actually have Git in this environment. And as expected, what we would actually need to do as part of our Dockerfile is have these relevant pre-steps. We're using Alpine, so unlike the Debian CentOS derivatives where you'd have yum or apt, we actually need to use the APK package manager. So I'm just going to do an APK update. We'll do an APK add git. And if we actually try that now, we can actually clone that. We can go in, and if we take a look, we've got our cmatrix C source code. And next step on this is actually building this cmatrix project. So going back, you can actually see there, it guides you on some steps that you actually need to do. So auto reconf-i, configure, make, install. So let's actually see this. And again, as per what we actually encountered with Git, we're going to hit another obstacle here. We don't actually have this. We need to actually install another package, autoconf, to satisfy this. So if we add in autoconf and we try this again, now we've hit this problem, so we've hit a further problem. Auto reconf, AC local failed with exit status 2. And in this case, we would all pretty much do the same thing. We'd go to Google, we'd search for that error, and Google or your favorite search engine would tell you that you need automake. So we'll just install automake. And if we actually try the auto reconf, that's actually looking better. And if you're new to building from C or other languages, similar languages, this kind of output, it can seem a little bit intimidating, but that output was actually successful, as you can see there from the error code. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to try and build this project so that it's a static, it's statically compiled. And you've got other languages, so your languages like Golang, Rust, etc., typically have this static compilation as standard, but with C, you actually need to do a little bit more work to get this. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pass in a specific compiler flag to have this as static, so that ideally we can get this C matrix to a single binary and with as minimal as possible external dependencies. So if we do the configure step, and lo and behold, that's actually failed because now we don't actually have anything to actually build this. There's no compiler tools in this current environment. So with your CentOS Debian, there's typically a compiler group or package that you can install. And on Alpine, the equivalent is this Alpine SDK. So what we're going to do is install that. And it's important to note here how much has actually been added to our image. So we can actually see there we've added a number of things already. So where we were doing Git, where we were adding auto reconf. All of this is going to be building up and taking its toll on the container image. So this one in particular, 300 megs, that's going to make an impact on our container image. And if we actually look through that configure, we actually have some, sorry, I've got to do the configure again because we've now got the compiler tools. So yes, now that we've done that, we've got the compiler tools, we run the configure, and you can see there we've got a couple of warnings. So we're actually missing 2 directories, and there's actually some libraries that we're missing at this point. And again, if I was actually doing this and I was going through the process of trying to do this from scratch, I'd be back and forth with my favorite search engine. And in this case, what you actually find is you need to satisfy these dependencies that we see here, we need ncurses dev and ncurses static. So let's actually just add those in. And let's fix those 2 directories that were missing. So there's 1, there's 2, and we'll try our configure once again. And great, as you can see, that's actually gone through as expected. And if we actually do the next step, which is make to actually compile this code, that's done that super quick. And if we take a look, we have a cmatrix binary. And if we run this, we've actually got an example of our terminal, our matrix terminal there. So that's great. We've actually proven the steps in some shape or form of what we need to do to actually get this from code to a binary. And what I would do at this point, so as I say, this process I typically follow whenever I'm building any kind of software. I like to actually getting into a shell environment and building. And then what I will actually do is I will grab that history and I will typically save that history and get out of there. And just to note, when I ran that container from the start, I did run it with --rm. So as soon as I exit, I am going to actually lose this. So I would pay particular attention to capturing all of those steps. And if I just do a docker ps, you can actually see that that container has now gone. So then what I would actually do is take that base image that we've actually got, and I would dump that history to that Docker file. And if we take a look at the Docker file, we've now got our initial bit at the top, and we've actually got this. So we can actually now start going through the process of getting this into something that actually resembles what we need. So first of all, what I'm going to do is remove the maintainer entry. And for any of these where they were just informational or we encountered some errors, quite simply hash them out. So we tried the git clone. That didn't work initially because we didn't have git. We did the APK update. We added git. We went into the cmatrix. We don't need the ls. We tried auto reconf a number of times until we actually satisfied some dependencies. So that was a check as well, the echo. And again, we did the configure. That failed. We needed the Alpine SDK, the compiler tools. We needed those directories. And yeah, and we don't need that. So we've kind of broken this down to the core steps that we actually need there. And if we actually get rid of those old ones, and what I'll do at this point is just quick and easy convert these to run statements. And this last one, this will be our command that we actually execute in the container. So let's just save that, and let's see what happens when we do the build. Okay, and we've hit an issue there, and this was actually intended. If we actually go back in there, the first mistake that we've actually made there is we've actually got this CD into the cmatrix code. Now, when you actually change a directory with a run command, it only persists for that particular directory. So what we actually need to do instead is use the work directory clause. So we're going to put our work directory as cmatrix. We're going to get rid of that, and we'll tell it to actually, before, when we were cloning, it was making that cmatrix directory. We'll be in that directory now, so we'll just clone to the current directory. And let's see what happens if we try and build this time. So you can see there's at the moment, there's a lot of layers in this. There's a lot of components that we've actually got. But it did actually do it. And if we actually run, this is working now as a container. So we've moved on to that next stage. We've actually taken it from that history. We've got it as a working container. But if we actually take a look at this, it is huge. It's 320 megabytes for a binary, which is, when compiled, is roughly a megabyte or so. So let's have a look at the next stage, which is refactoring this. So what we can actually do here with refactoring, we have, for example, the labels. We don't actually need we don't actually need 2 entries for that, so we can actually combine that into one particular entry. We are duplicating a lot of the APK commands, so let's actually combine those as well. And let's get rid of that, and let's take a look at this. Let's see how we get on. Now on this, we're not really going to reduce any of the size, but we will bring the number of layers down by combining some of those into the same one. And yep, that's actually succeeded. But as I actually say, if we run the Docker images, it's going to be the same size. So let's actually take a look at this again. And we can actually take this even further. We've got all of these different run commands here, which technically we don't actually need as well. We can piggyback a lot of these onto that first one. And by the way, if you're actually following along with this, I'm doing the changes here just to actually show them. You can just use the examples on the side. So if we actually do this and we add all of these on and we check our build again, And yeah, we actually got that there to 3 layers. But as I say, it's still a big image. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this now from a multi-stage viewpoint, which is how we're effectively going to bring down this size. So if we actually take a look at it, what we're going to do is move the main build stage of this into its own unique layer, and we'll essentially copy this later on. And let's actually take this at the top. So this will be our main build container. And we will have our cmatrix container image. So this will also use Alpine. So at the top, this will become as cmatrix builder. So we're going to name this one. The labels need to go into the other. Yep. Underneath. And I think, oh yeah, and we also, so all of our build stage is going to happen in this top component now. And what we're going to actually do is we're going to copy, and I'm just going to use that example from there. We're going to copy from our cmatrix builder the actual binary at the end. So this should bring down that 300 megabytes quite significantly. So let's see what happens when we do this. Okay, super quick. And if we run this, that's brought that down to something a lot more sensible. It's brought it down to 8.52 megabytes. But there is a problem. When we run it, we get this error message where it was error opening xterm. And what's actually happened here, as we were going through and we were building these dependencies, this project, the way the screensaver works, it's dependent on ncurses, and it needs some ncurses libraries to know how to interact with the terminal. So whilst we've actually built everything into it, sometimes, as much as you try and reduce something down, there will be dependencies that you need in your main image. So what we're going to do, if we just bring this in, and we quite simply are going to add this last dependency for ncurses term info base. And if I actually do this, and we run, we've now got something down to a reasonable size. It's down to 8 or 9 megabytes. And just to confirm that, I'll bring this up. Okay, 10 megabytes, still good. Okay, so some best practices with this. If we actually take a look at this, we are currently running as a root user. And a quick way I can actually show this, you can actually see there, I do a who am I. This is running as root. So let's actually fix this. We'll go back into this Docker image. And what we need to do is add a user. So we're going to add a user of Thomas Anderson, keeping with our matrix theme. And we need to actually set the user at the bottom there. And again, if we actually do the build, oh, what have I done? Do you know what? Because of the time, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. And I'm going to refer to this. I think I left the, yeah, I didn't put those on. Okay, but if we actually build, and we check, still working, which is great. And if we actually check, you can actually see there we're now running as a non-root user. Something you can actually do with this, if you take a look at the cmatrix, you hop into that cmatrix container, you get a lot of options that we're not actually seeing with this. We're just running it with a simple command. So let's actually tweak this container so that we can take advantage of this and have it so that we can run with bold characters or different colors easily from our container. We don't want to have it restricted where we can only run it one way. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this, and we're going to actually change. So rather than this being our command, this will then be our entry point, and we're going to use that bold option. So command then becomes our arguments. And if we actually build this, so that's built quite quickly. And now if we actually run that, you can see we've set it to have this bold option by default. But if we want, this is now quite a versatile container. We can actually do things like running this with -help, and we can run it with different options. So, for example, we'll do we'll update the speed, we'll change the colors, and you can actually see that's going through. So this simple change of changing the command to entry point makes this a lot more versatile in itself. And good, I was a bit worried about the time, but we're actually okay. We're on the last step of this. So we've actually now got this, this container image that we've actually brought it down. We've gone through the journey. We've built this from scratch. We've brought down the layers. We've brought down the size. We've refactored. We've put in some security best practice with the user. Now, let's actually look at this and see how we can actually build this so it will work on every architecture that Alpine supports. So the first thing I'm going to do is a Docker login, and I actually did this just before I started, so I didn't need to type my password in. And we're going to use Docker BuildX. So if you haven't used Docker BuildX before, what you will actually do is you will create a BuildX builder. So you can actually see there, I've just given this a simple name of multi-arch builder. And I've also just taken advantage, this --use is quite convenient. And what we're going to do then is we're going to actually build this, and we're going to tell it to build for all of these different platforms. So all I did with this is go on to the Alpine the Alpine Docker Hub image. I looked through, I picked all of these different ones, and this will actually then cross-build for all of these different platforms, and then it will actually push it through to my Docker Hub. So if I press return on this, and I pray to the demo god, so it's pulling down the metadata for each of those. And you can see in parallel we have all of these different builds which are actually going on for all of the various architectures that we have there. And please don't eat into my 10 minutes. And essentially, with this process, what it's actually going to do is it's, with the push command that we have at the end there, this will actually push to Docker Hub. And if you actually check this on Docker Hub and you checked the various images which are available, you would see you would see one for each of those. Oh, so yeah, some of them have just completed there. You can see those copy steps at the end. They've got to that last stage. So ARM64, AMD. Okay, now it's actually bundling all of those layers. It's pushing those layers. And there we have it. So that's now available on Docker Hub. So anyone can actually use that image. So if I bring back up the tutorial, you yourselves could actually try this. And something I actually love with this, even though I'm on an Apple Silicon Mac here, you can actually try out images for various different ones. So I've got an example there. That's quite an obscure one, so PPC64LE, and if I actually do that, you can see it's pulling and it's run. So any of you can actually try that now. You could do an equivalent Docker run yourselves, and you can grab the image that I've literally just baked there. So I'll put that back if any of you want to actually any of you do want to try that out. And that's it. That's the main tutorial. So thank you. I was a bit tight on time there. I thought I was going to run out. Any questions? Hey. Yeah, so I built that myself from scratch, and the essentially I started with just a bootstrap web page and built through, and the main ingredient that you really want to look at with this is a project called TTYD, which actually came up in my previous talk for something else, but I will actually show you this. I love this project. This by here. So what you actually do with this allows you to essentially, if you get the TTYD binary, you can run that, and you can run it with something like bash or userbin login, and that creates the web page, a web interface for you. And quite simply, it's literally just an iframe to that page. Yeah. Is there any more questions? All right, I think we're all hanging out in the CNCF happy hour then. Thank you.